Well, hello and welcome to our Fall 2022 Alumni Chats. And I want to thank Allie Canal for being here today. Thanks so
Hi.
much, Allie.
Hello.
Allie is an on-air entertainment business reporter at Yahoo Finance. Previously, she was an associate producer with People.com, and she graduated in 2016 with a degree in English. So, yes.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, and thanks for joining.
Of
So I think
course,
we'll
of
just
course.
turn it right over to you. And if you can tell us a little bit about like what does a role as a reporter at Yahoo Finance look like? We'll just start there.
Yeah, so it's different every day. So for my role specifically, it's sort of dual digital print writing while also going on camera. So we need to be super flexible with that. A lot of the times, the live shows that we have will feed the beast for our writing. So if there is an analyst on covering Netflix, for example, I'll join the live show, ask a couple questions, and then basically it's free reporting in a way, because then I can just go and write up whatever they say for an article, or vice versa. Maybe I have an original story that I've been working on. I'll go to the executive producers and say, hey, I have this story on the box office, and I think it would be great for the live shows. I'll go on the show, do a hit, and then that video will live in the article. So sort of about leveraging live with our writing and our print, but different every day. News of day I'm tracking. Earnings season is about to start. It's already started, but for me, it really picks up next week. So that's a big emphasis for me, but really just trying to find the interesting day 2, day 3 stories, the longer form stories, talk to sources, and get some originals out there, while also just kind of keeping track of the news and the stock prices and everything going on in the business world.
Thanks, Allie. So like I was thinking now way back to when you were here at Georgetown. It wasn't that far away. So
yes, not that long
ago. Not that far. And so when we first started meeting and thinking about the internships that you had, so I'm thinking for maybe our students who are still in that sophomore, junior, and thinking through like, okay, what do I do if I want to do something like Allie's doing, which she is on air. And I remember that you worked at an affiliate station, I think in Philly. So I think, can you talk us through some of those internships and why they were important and what you got out of them?
Totally. I do think internships are very important, because for me, it also helped me figure out what I didn't want to do too. So I remember my sophomore year, I had an internship at a local newspaper, and I was super excited about it. I thought newspaper would be really fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't absolutely love it. I got to do a column, which was really cool, called the Beach Bums Journal. The newspaper was in a shore town, so that was super fun. But I wanted something. I was always attracted to television. In high school, I was on the TV committee, and at Georgetown, I was on the GMA, all the GMA offerings that they have, and the recordings for on camera and behind the scenes as production. So I always knew that television was really where I ultimately wanted to try to go. So internships were super important for that. My junior year, I got the internship at 6ABC, which is an affiliate in Philadelphia. And that's right outside of where I grew up. And I think that was a really good step to learn as much as possible. I think I was also applying to internships in New York City at World News Tonight and all those bigger shows. I think if I ended up choosing one of those, I wouldn't have had the hands-on experience that I got from a local affiliate station. They were really good with letting me try different things and sort of do whatever I wanted, which was super helpful, especially at that point in my journey of figuring out what I wanted to do for a career. And then ultimately my senior year, spring break, I know it's spring break, it's senior year, all my friends were going to Mexico. I did the GMA externship, and that I think really was instrumental in helping me find and land my first job. If you don't know about the externship, definitely talk to Jackie about it. It's super, super great networking. You get to meet people in the field. A lot of them are Georgetown grads. They want to help you. And that's how I landed my first job at People Magazine, which at the time was my dream job. So it's just crazy how it all works out. So internships, externships, I definitely recommend doing all of the above.
I often talk to students about affiliate stations and they haven't really heard of them. And so it's interesting. It's like just talking about the different parts, but it's something that you did. And so it sounds like you recommend it as having a more hands-on experience than definitely maybe like starting, not that if you didn't choose one of the bigger ones,
Right.
but you got a package out of it. You got a lot out of it.
Right. There's pros and cons to both. And I think at the end of the day, whenever you enter into an internship, you want to think, what do I want to get out of it? To me, I wanted to get some reels. I was editing videos. I was producing videos. I was practicing stand-ups. And that was a great thing for me to get out of that internship and just learn more and take it to the next step. And I did get a chance to write scripts, and they let me do a lot of things on camera and off camera. So just asking for opportunities is really important. I think internships, it can be easy to kind of get like, because people are so busy, right? They're doing their normal job. You need to go into it being, what do I want to get out of this? And voice your opinion, make sure you're heard, and work hard. And ultimately that will be the thing that shines through.
So, and I'm also thinking about like the internships, the skills that you're gaining. So I'm thinking like, back then, but where you are now, if you were to advise students about, especially what you know about the industry now, like what are some of the skills that you think that they should walk away having, whether it's soft skills or like the hard skills, especially if they're interested in more kind of streaming TV media or anything that you can think of that would be helpful?
Yeah. So at Georgetown, I majored in English, but I minored in journalism and business. So I thought that minor combo was important, especially with what I'm doing now, being in business news. But at the time, I had no interest in going to business news or finance news. I thought, I'm not a finance girl. I like pop culture. But your career takes you in many different ways. So I'd say the first thing is be flexible, right? Be open to every opportunity. And I will say that every step that I've made in my career is because I forced it to be a step in my career. So for example, when I first got to People, I was a booking assistant, production and booking assistant. And I wanted to be a live show producer on the morning show. And I just noticed that the talent that I was booking for, who was based in LA, he didn't have a designated producer. So I started producing for him, writing questions for his interviews. I started, writing scripts for the live show. And then when there was a shakeup on that team, after 4 months of doing that, I got brought on as a live show producer. And the same thing with here at Yahoo Finance. I started off as a live show producer. I wasn't on camera. I wasn't a reporter, but I noticed that there was a need for a media reporter. No one was covering a lot of the Netflix and the Oscars and the Grammys that all have a tie to business. So I just started doing it. I just started writing. I pitched a whole segment. I pitched myself for the segment. And that started off as okay, we'll try a once a week thing. That turned into multiple times a week, to all of a sudden now I'm a reporter and I'm on the live shows every single day. So definitely have a go-getter mentality, go above and beyond your title, show that you want something, because you can zigzag your career if you're willing to put in the work. And you also have to be in a place that encourages that and fosters that. And that's important too. So if you're in a place where you think you can't grow, be willing to pivot and try somewhere else. And eventually you'll find the manager and the job that is important for you. But in terms of like day-to-day skills, you learn a lot on the job. And so I think it's more important to have, that go-getter mentality and going above and beyond and being a hard worker, because people recognize that at the end of the day. If you're a hard worker, that's what people immediately zone into. They're like, oh, she'll get that eventually because she's here till 7 every day and she's asking questions. And that, I think, being in the field and just working the past 7 years, that's kind of what sticks out to me as the most important skill.
So the other skill I'm thinking about is kind of goes back to, you mentioned the GMA externship. And so those of you who are either listening live or they're recording this, Georgetown Entertainment Media Alliance, that's what GMA is. And the externship is an opportunity for students to go to LA or New York during spring break and do just a series of informational interviews. So the other skill I was thinking about is relationship building or networking.
100%.
Which is often the thing that makes students the most nervous. But can you talk a little bit about networking and the importance of it in the industry?
Yeah, and I get it. Look, networking it's anxiety inducing, and you feel like you need to make all these connections, But it's really, like Jackie said, building relationships, getting coffee with people. You don't immediately need to get a job offer from them, but just kind of just being in the industry, talking to people, because some people know other people. Entertainment and media in general is very, very small. You will probably work with different people at different companies at different times of your career. So don't burn any bridges, number one. And number two, yeah, like make sure you're reaching out to people, keeping people updated too. This is my updated resume. This is my updated reel. Oh, I'm in your city. Can we meet for coffee? That is super important. And I just think having that face-to-face interaction now that we're in a good spot with the pandemic too, that's great as well. But with Zoom and all that's new technologies, you can grab a Zoom with someone on the other side of the country now, and that's totally acceptable. So networking can be anything from the big events that, Georgetown hosts, or a smaller, more intimate event. And I recommend LinkedIn too. I remember when I was looking for jobs, I was on LinkedIn and I was just searching companies that I was interested in and then looking to see who went to, if anyone from Georgetown went there. And I remember for MTV, there was a Georgetown alum, and I messaged him and said, hey, I'm in New York. I'm meeting with people. Can we get coffee? He did. We got coffee. And he was like, there's an entry-level job that I have available if you want to apply for it. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I applied for that job. I got that job. I ultimately chose the job at People, but that's just one example of how just a simple like LinkedIn message got me to a good spot with this Georgetown alum. And like I said, Georgetown people want to help Georgetown people, so just utilize your network, whether it be your school or other connections you have outside of the university is super important.
Because they also lead to jobs. So
yeah. And not every meeting is going to lead to a job, but you just never know. Timing might be perfect. And if it doesn't happen, then that person might think of you, a year or 2 years down the line and reach back out. So just always important to maintain connections.
Yeah. So the other thing that, as you know, being a Georgetown student is, timelines for this industry are are variable. But of course, you also know that Georgetown, there's that finance consulting juggernaut that comes through with very structured timelines and suits all at the same time. Can you speak a little bit to the variability of the entertainment industry and what that looks like for the folks on the line?
Yeah. And my best friends, we were mixed. Like I would say half of us were finance consulting and had our jobs by junior year summer. And then the other half of us were in more creative fields and just didn't I remember it being March and April, and I was freaking out, being like, am I going to graduate without a job? I had a friend who, was so nervous about that. And she quickly accepted a job, didn't love it, but was like, whatever, I need a job when I graduate. And she ended up quitting after 6 weeks because she hated it, and then took her time and found something that she really loved. Looking back, I wish I wasn't so crazy about having to secure a job right before graduation. And it's also kind of nice just taking the summer to just enjoy and really think about and reflect what you want. Of course, if you land your dream job before you graduate, that's amazing. But I don't think you need to put that pressure on yourself. And I get it because I had that pressure and I was freaking out about it. But the timeline is completely different from financing and consulting. And there's just not one time to get hired. I think it's more important to make sure that whatever job that you are hired for, you genuinely want to do. Because ideally, you don't want to leave a company very quickly, especially your first job. You want to try and establish some sort of roots, at least for a year or two. But I get the stress of it all, but just make sure that it's a company that you're curious about and see yourself growing in.
Yeah, we just had, I'm trying to think who was here, Paramount, that's it. And they suggested don't start applying until 6 to 8 weeks prior to graduation because things happen very quickly. So
yes, and that's true too. And you don't want to get a job and be like, well, I can't start until June, and then they have to go and find someone else to do the position. But that's funny. I just interviewed the CEO of Paramount last week, so that's funny.
Oh, that's crazy. I think I might have seen that too.
Yeah. That's so funny. Full circle moment.
So, okay. So now we're at the point where, timelines being what they are, and the student has their internship, or not has, but they're going in for an interview. So the kind of the interview piece, whether for internship or job, would you say there are like kind of any kind of typical questions or things students just should prepare for in entertainment and media, like questions that are going to come, or questions that you even ask?
Yeah, I would try and make sure, if you're in news and media, to make sure you actually know what's going on with the world, especially with whatever role you're applying to. If you're applying to a business role, you should know what's happening with the stock market. You should know what's happening with, the talk on Wall Street with recessions and yield curves. If you're applying for a pop culture position, what are the top pop culture headlines? You should have a pulse on all of those things. You should also really know the company that you're applying for inside and out. How many live shows do they have? Who are the anchors? What's the style of the show? And also, what can you do differently or potentially better? Because I've had people ask, what would you do to improve what we currently have? So having opinions on that, and making sure you're paying attention to what's currently available and what you could do to shake it up, and just pitching things. If you have an amazing idea, go into it and pitch it. If, like, I remember in my interview for this job, I was pitching all of these crazy ideas that I had, and they loved it, because I think sometimes that's lacking in some of the interviews. So pitching is important. I'm also a big believer in writing thank you emails after your interviews. I interviewed some people, and not one person emailed me a thank you email. And I remember that sticking out and thinking, if one of those people had emailed me, they would have gone to the top of my list. So I think that's becoming more of a lost art as time goes on. And it definitely goes a long way, whether it doesn't even need to be a handwritten note. Just an email is totally fine. Thanking them for their time, and, maybe resending your resume or asking if they have any other questions, I think is important as well.
Yeah, that's something that I hear folks say a lot about, writing the thank you afterwards, whether I have a little, it's on this side, it's like a thank you wall of just things. And it's so nice to have them. But yes, just an email is very gracious. So please do that. As we're kind of wrapping up and kind of moving on to, as I said, for those of you that are watching the recording, love that you joined us and you learned some things. And then for those people who are live, I'd like to give some time for you to ask questions if you have them. But one of the last questions I have is on emerging trends that you're seeing kind of in the industry. You're reporting on, looks like food and entertainment, just in your world. So you might have some ideas there. But for students that are, I'm thinking even for going in for interviews, what are some things that you're seeing that maybe they should prepare themselves? Maybe it's the result of COVID or something else completely.
I would say across the board, a lot of industries are changing. Specifically with media, we seem to be at this reckoning moment with media, specifically streaming. For a while there, it was just all about subscriber numbers. And then during COVID, we saw this subscriber acceleration. But now we've sort of reached peak subscriber levels in the US. And Wall Street is now focused on profitability. So how are you as a business? How can you make money? And that's across all of the cable companies, because we're seeing losses in linear television. We're seeing greater competition. It's not just Netflix. That's not the only game in town. Because of that, we're seeing more of these companies roll out ad-supported tiers. Netflix is coming out with its own on November 3rd. Disney is coming out with one. And Netflix, a while ago said that they would never, ever have ads on their platform. So there's just a shifting moment in the industry. I think because of COVID, because of this recovery effort, and also the global macroeconomic headwinds too. We're sort of entering this recession. So as a company, how can you safeguard yourself and how can you maintain good stock prices? You need to show some profitability. So that's a big trend I'm noticing in media. specifically with my beat. But overall, just in the industry, I think, podcasts have really exploded as a really big media source. So there's a lot of jobs in there. I noticed that, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they're not just print anymore. They're interactive. They have games, and even Netflix, they're exploring gaming. But New York Times has games. They have recipes that they're now doing. I think they have a podcast as well. So you're seeing media sort of go through this reckoning moment, which is actually, I think, really exciting, because now you have all these new formats. There's digital, there's video, there's television, there's audio, not just one thing fits all. So, you always hear, oh, you're going into media, it's a dying business. It's really not. It's just an evolving business. So, this is, I think, is a really exciting time to get in on it, because people are still figuring it out. Companies are still figuring it out.
Great. So I'm thinking this might be a good time to kind of end, but the last thing I always ask folks that join me, is there anything I didn't ask, or any last words of wisdom or advice that you would want to leave with the students?
Yeah, well, I want to say, when I decided to major in English, I definitely got, my parents included, they were like, why are you majoring in English? Why don't you major in business? And I know, being a Georgetown student, it gets a lot to think about, am I not majoring in business? Am I not going pre-med, or, not going on the Hill? Just at the end of the day, you have to do what you're passionate about. And there's an amazing network of Georgetown Hoyas that are in this field and are doing pretty cool and ridiculous things in this field. So I would say, just stay the course. There are a lot of things you could do with an English major, liberal arts major. At the end of the day, communication is very important. Everyone has to write some emails, but don't let that get discouraging, I think is something, because I know that came up for me a lot during my 4 years.
Well, Allie, thank you so much. And for those of you who joined us live, if you can just hold while I end the recording.
Mm-hmm.